Hey, have you ever thought about the rules that different countries play by? What happens if someone from one place does something that another country thinks is, well, wrong?
It gets complicated fast.
Exactly. And today we're diving into a really interesting and a pretty important situation. It involves a court that works on a global scale, the International Criminal Court, or ICC, and a brand new bill in the U.S. Congress. It's called the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act.
That's right. And this isn't just some, dusty legal theory stuff. This bill is a direct response to specific actions taken by the ICC. And it really has the potential to reshape how the United States interacts with international law and even its allies.
So, this Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, the name itself tells you there's some friction there.
Right. It really signals a strong stance.
Our goal in this deep dive is basically to understand what this bill is all about. Why did it suddenly pop up? What's it trying to do? And what could the bigger picture implications be? We'll be looking closely at parts of the actual bill text, House Bill 23, specifically from when it was being discussed in the Senate back in January 2025.
So we're getting it straight from the source.
Exactly. Think of this as your backstage pass, trying to understand a pretty complex issue. It really touches on how countries deal with each other, sovereignty, and this whole idea of global justice.
Okay, so to really get what's going on, there's a key point you need to grasp right off the bat. The United States and also Israel are not members of the International Criminal Court.
Right, that's crucial.
It really is. This isn't like, just choosing not to join a club.
Yeah.
It has major legal consequences. Because they haven't signed and ratified the treaty that created the ICC, that's called the Rome Statute, they fundamentally don't believe the court has the authority to jurisdiction over them or their citizens.
So they haven't agreed to its rule.
Precisely. And this basic disagreement is stated very clearly right in the findings section of the bill itself.
It's like that saying, my house, my rules, but on an international scale. The U.S. and Israel are essentially saying, we didn't agree to play by the ICC's rules, so why should it have power over us?
That's the core of their position.
Now, this long-standing disagreement really flared up recently because of a specific event, didn't it?
Yes. Back in May of 2024, the ICC's chief prosecutor announced he was seeking arrest warrants for the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, and also the Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant.
Wow, okay. High-level officials.
Very high level. And this new bill we're talking about, it doesn't mince words in its reaction. It calls those prosecutor actions illegitimate and baseless. Strong language.
Definitely strong. And it didn't just stop with the prosecutor's request, did it?
No, it escalated.
Yeah.
In November 2024, one of the ICC's chambers, the pretrial chamber, actually issued those arrest warrants.
So they went through with it.
They did. And the bill we're examining strongly condemns that step as well. So you see this progression. Prosecutor seeks warrants, court issues warrants, and the U.S. bill condemns both actions forcefully. It clearly set off major alarm bells in the U.S. government.
What's interesting, though, is that this isn't the first time the U.S. has grappled with the idea of international courts potentially having power over its own people, especially military and leaders.
That's a really important point.
This new bill actually refers back to an older law from 2002. It's called the American Service Members Protection Act. And apparently that was something both Democrats and Republicans agreed on back then.
Yes, it had bipartisan support. Its main purpose was precisely to shield U.S. military personnel and government officials, and also those from certain allied countries, from being hauled before international courts that the U.S. isn't a part of, like the ICC.
So this concern isn't totally new?
Not at all. That 2002 act really highlights a long-standing worry within the U.S. government. The possibility that the ICC might try to investigate or prosecute high-ranking U.S. officials, maybe even up to the president.
Right.
So this new bill, the Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act, it feels like it's building on that existing foundation, but applying it very specifically to the current situation involving Israel and the ICC's recent actions against its leaders.
Okay, so the core argument, the main idea behind this new bill seems to be that what the ICC did regarding Israel is setting a damaging precedent. What exactly do they mean by precedent here?
Well, when they say precedent, they're worried that the ICC's actions against Israel, a country that, like the U.S., hasn't agreed to the court's authority, could make it seem more acceptable or legally easier for the ICC to try similar things against other non-member countries in the future, including the United States itself.
Okay, so it's a slippery slope kind of argument. If they can do it to Israel, maybe they'll try it with us next.
That seems to be the central concern, yes. The U.S. worries that if the ICC can take these significant steps, issuing arrest warrants for leaders of a close ally like Israel, it might open the door for similar actions against the U.S. or any other country that hasn't signed the Rome Statute.
So the bill's position is basically that the U.S. has to push back now.
Exactly. The bill argues that the U.S. must actively oppose these ICC actions, whether they target the U.S. directly or Israel or, frankly, any other ally that hasn't consented to the ICC's jurisdiction or isn't a member state.
Okay, so the U.S. wants to push back. How exactly does this Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act plan to do that? What's its main tool or weapon?
The bill's primary mechanism is the threat and potential use of sanctions. Pretty serious stuff.
Sanctions, okay. How would that work?
So the bill states that if the ICC tries to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute someone the bill defines as a protected person, we'll get to that definition soon, then the president must impose sanctions.
Must impose, not may.
The bill uses mandatory language here. The sanctions would target the specific foreign individuals who are determined to be involved in assisting the ICC with these actions. This could potentially include ICC prosecutors, investigators, judges, maybe even individuals providing logistical or legal support to those efforts. And crucially, it can also include their immediate family members.
Wow, family members too. Now, sanctions can sound a bit abstract sometimes. What would these sanctions actually look like in practice? What do they do?
Good question. The bill outlines two main types of sanctions. First, there's the blocking of property and related interests.
Blocking property, like freezing assets.
Exactly. This uses powers from a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEP. It basically allows the president, in certain situations, to freeze any assets these targeted foreign individuals might have within the U.S. or that are controlled by U.S. persons. Like bank accounts, real estate, investments, making them inaccessible.
Okay, hitting them financially. What's the second type of sanction?
The second type involves immigration restrictions. Under the Immigration and Nationality Act, anyone identified as being involved in these ICC actions against protected persons would become inadmissible to the United States.
Meaning they can't come here?
Correct. They wouldn't be eligible to receive a visa. If they already have a visa, it could be revoked. And they wouldn't be eligible for other ways to enter or stay in the U.S., like parole. So essentially, it bars them from traveling to or living in the United States.
So it's both freezing their money here and keeping them out. The bill also mentions penalties if someone tries to ignore or violate these sanctions, right?
Yes, it does. It references back to that same IEPA law, which includes pretty significant penalties for violations, potentially large fines, and even criminal charges. So the message is clear. These sanctions are intended to have teeth and be taken very seriously.
Now, what about flexibility? Sometimes situations change, or maybe there are unintended consequences. Does the bill allow the president any leeway?
It does include a waiver provision. The president can temporarily waive the sanctions for a period of up to 90 days at a time.
Only 90 days?
Yes, and it can be renewed. But there's a condition. The president has to determine and certify to Congress that the waiver is vital to the national security interest of the United States.
So it needs a strong justification.
A very strong one. And it's not something done quietly. If the president issues a waiver, they have to send a detailed report to the relevant congressional committees within 15 days. That report needs to explain why the waiver is crucial, describe the specific actions that led to the sanctions in the first place, and outline what both the U.S. and the ICC are doing regarding the investigation or prosecution of these protected persons.
So it's a temporary pause button, but with significant oversight and reporting required. What about ending the sanctions altogether? How could that happen?
For the sanctions to be terminated completely, the bill sets a high bar. The president would need to certify in writing to the relevant congressional committees that the ICC has totally ceased all efforts to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute all protected persons.
All of them, not just the specific case that triggered the sanctions.
The language says all protected persons. And it adds that the ICC must have permanently closed any related investigations or preliminary examinations. Basically, the ICC would have to completely back off from any actions against individuals covered by the bill's definition for the sanctions to be lifted for good.
Okay, that's a clear condition. Now, beyond targeting individuals involved with the ICC, does the bill address the U.S.'s overall financial relationship with the court?
Oh, absolutely. It takes a very direct approach to funding. The bill states that as soon as it's enacted into law, any U.S. funds that have already been appropriated or made available for the ICC but haven't been spent yet are immediately rescinded, taken back.
So cutting off current funding.
Exactly. And looking forward, it explicitly prohibits any future appropriated funds from being used for the ICC, period. No U.S. government money can go to support the court in any way.
That's a major statement. It aims to significantly limit the ICC's resources, at least from the U.S. side.
It's a clear financial break and a strong signal of disapproval.
Okay, we've talked a lot about sanctions targeting people involved with the ICC and about cutting funding, but you mentioned this key term, protected person. Who exactly does this bill consider a protected person? That seems really crucial.
It absolutely is. The definition is quite broad.
Okay.
First, it covers U.S. persons. This includes any current or former member of the U.S. Armed Forces. It also includes current or former elected or appointed officials of the U.S. government.
Elected or appointed, okay.
And it includes any person currently or formerly employed by or working as a contractor for the U.S. government. It also covers U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents green card holders. This protection applies unless the U.S. were to formally consent to ICC jurisdiction and become a state party to the Rome Statute, which, as we said, it hasn't done.
That's a very wide net covering U.S. individuals. What about people from allied countries? Are they protected too?
Yes, the definition extends protection to nationals of U.S. allies as well. Specifically, it covers citizens and lawful residents of countries that are members of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or countries designated as major non-NATO allies.
Like Israel, for instance.
Israel is designated as a major non-NATO ally, yes, but there's a key condition for these allies. Their country must also not have consented to the ICC's jurisdiction or be a party to the Rome Statute.
Ah, so it protects allies who are in the same boat as the U.S. regarding the ICC.
Precisely. And for those qualifying allies, the protection covers their current and former military personnel, their current and former elected or appointed government officials, and people employed by or working for their governments.
Got it. And just to make sure everyone is crystal clear, the bill defines what it means by a U.S. ally, right?
It does. It explicitly clarifies that an ally of the United States refers to the government of a NATO member country or the government of a major non-NATO ally. And it actually points back to the definition used in that earlier 2002 American Service Members Protection Act.
Consistency.
Right. And the bill also includes clear definitions for other key terms like foreign person, immediate family member, which is relevant for the sanctions, the International Criminal Court itself, and the Rome Statute, just to ensure there's no ambiguity about what the terms mean in the context of this law.
Okay, let's try and pull this all together then. This Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act is essentially a very forceful response from the U.S. Congress, reacting specifically to the ICC's recent moves, particularly those arrest warrants issued for Israeli officials.
That seems to be the immediate trigger, yes.
And it's fundamentally about the U.S. asserting its position and defending its allies' position that the ICC doesn't have the right, the jurisdiction, to prosecute individuals from countries that haven't agreed to its rules by joining the Rome Statute.
Exactly. The core goal appears to be pushing back hard against what the U.S. sees as the ICC overstepping its authority, claiming power it doesn't legitimately possess over the U.S. and allies in similar situations.
And the main tools, the primary ways they plan to exert this pressure are, 1, threatening and potentially imposing sanctions, financial, and travel restrictions on individuals and their families who assist the ICC in these specific investigations or prosecutions.
Correct. Targeting the individuals involved.
And 2, completely cutting off all U.S. financial support for the International Criminal Court, both current and future funding.
Right. It's a two-pronged approach. Individual consequences and institutional defunding. It really boils down to a fundamental disagreement about the reach of international law, the principle of national sovereignty, a country's right to govern itself without external interference, and the proper role of international bodies like the ICC, especially when dealing with powerful nations that haven't signed on.
This raises some really big questions, doesn't it? Especially for, maybe high school students listening, trying to understand how the world works. Think about it. What does it actually mean for a major country like the U.S. to say that an international court, one designed to address major crimes, doesn't have authority over them?
It's a profound question about the nature of international order.
Yeah. And how might other countries view this? Countries that are members of the ICC, for example. What might they think about the U.S. position and this bill?
Perspectives will likely differ widely around the globe, depending on a country's own relationship with the ICC and its views on international justice versus national sovereignty.
And what could be the long-term consequences for, the future of international cooperation, the fight against impunity for major crimes, or just the general relationship between nations? These are really complex issues, and there isn't one easy answer. There are definitely different valid perspectives to consider.
Absolutely.
If you listening are interested in digging deeper, and I hope you are, you could maybe start by looking into the Rome Statute itself. What does the treaty actually say about jurisdiction and consent?
That's a great starting point. You could also research the history of the ICC. Why was it created in the first place? What problems was it trying to solve?
And definitely try to explore how different countries and experts view the court, its successes, its challenges, its legitimacy. Is it an essential tool for global justice, or does it sometimes overreach? It's a fascinating and incredibly important topic that really shapes international relations today. Thanks for diving deep with us on this one.
Thanks for having me. It's a critical issue to understand.